Hey, Lee, good to see you again. Glad to be back in the USA.
Well, we're glad to have you back. We've missed you, and we've enjoyed your videos.
Good, good. I had fun doing them. I really
Yes.
did. It's fun when you're traveling in another country and I just continue to be overwhelmed in the countries of Greece and Italy, which I both visited both. How literate they are, how many stores there are. I can go into the smallest of villages and there'd be a bookstore, go into the biggest of cities and there'd be 10 or 12 bookstores. Um,
And you hit
and a
every
fair
one of
amount
them.
of English books for sale as well. As a matter of fact, I picked up a few things, just light reading along the way, but they sell English books as well.
Well, good, good. So today we have no stranger to the Rare Book Cafe, Richard Mori, but Richard has on a different hat today. He's going to be promoting his upcoming book fair in another week or so. So we'll hear
That's
about
right,
what's
coming
going
up
on with that.
June 2nd, Concord, New Hampshire. We've got another fair coming up at the end of the month in Cooperstown.
Right.
We've got one also next week in Rose City, the Portland Book Fair. We've got another one coming up online, Getman's Virtual Fair. So there's lots of contacts for people all over the country to get on out there and
Buy
support your
books.
local booksellers.
That's right.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rare Book Cafe, the book lovers rendezvous. Well, we've been on the road. Everybody's been going in different directions, and we're finally at a little bit of status quo here. I was off in Greece and Italy. Lee, you've been off to your son's art show. Where was that held?
Well, that was 45 minutes away in
That was
Pennville, Georgia. But it was a lovely, well attended. He sold several pieces of art, and it was a really good event. We had a lot of fun.
good, good. And Richard Mori, our favorite guest host, was recently down in Washington, D.C. for a book fair.
Had a wonderful time. It held at the University Club. Eve and Edward did a fantastic job. It was enjoyed by all.
Ooh la la, the University Club.
Very fancy.
Now we had Edward on the show a few weeks back in preparation for it. Well attended, well conducted.
Very well attended. One of the more interesting things they had, as we're seeing in the trade now more and more, a lot of young people were there. People who work in Washington, but people from outside Washington. And of course, people who have jobs in Washington, which are fascinating. I met several of the librarians from the Smithsonian Institution were there, plus other institutions. It was just, and the most fascinating thing was that we went till 5 o'clock on Sunday, and there were people all over the floor at 5 o'clock.
Wow,
Didn't want to go home, huh?
Didn't want to go home.
that's great. That's
Now,
great.
what do you know about the Smithsonian libraries? Is it one library? Are there multiple libraries? How does that work?
Well, surprise, surprise, because we all know about this place called the Library of Congress, but that is not necessarily the biggest library, turns out. There are 21 separate libraries in the Smithsonian Institution.
Oh my!
21. I can't even go down the list. There's so many.
Now, have you ever sold into the Library of Congress?
Well, I'm actually in the process of doing. Oh, to the Library of Congress? No, no. The most interesting connection is that some years ago I traded for the very first what's called the Long Trail in Vermont. Similar, it's part of the Appalachian Mountain Club kind of program, except it's a separate organization in Vermont. And I got their first trail guide and map, which is a pamphlet from 1917, and it had the Library of Congress seal on it, meaning that the library had deaccessioned it, and I sold it back to the Long Trail Club.
Well, I've sold a fair amount to, well, from my standpoint, a fair amount to the African American Museum at the Smithsonian. And it's an interesting process. If it's one book, they may just buy it on the spot with a credit card. But if they have a whole long list of things that they want to consider, you package it up, send it to them. Their curators take a look at everything, decide what they want, send back what they don't want. And then you go through this long payment process. And the first time I had a really large sale from them, the government was shut down. And so the whole thing took like from the 1st of December until I got paid sometime in early April that year. But they are delightful to work with, just delightful.
They were very nice.
Know what they're doing.
Yeah, and, they do.
And you know, and I mean, I'm a small dealer, but they are really very professional, and I have really enjoyed, you know, my contacts with them. And I've also sold to the National Portrait Gallery, and it's the same kind of procedure.
Is that a picture of you, Lee? That you
right,
sold
a picture
them,
of me. Actually, it was sheet music, and what they wanted was the image from the front of the sheet music. So I'm still waiting for the portrait of me.
Each one of the museums in the Washington, D.C. area, Air and Space, the African American Museum, the National, the American Indian Museum or Indigenous People Museum, Museum of Natural History. Each one of these museums have their own library associated with them. Is that right, Richard?
Exactly. Yeah, and their own library staff. And the interesting thing she did explain to me that if they go to purchase something, they actually have to check not all the just the libraries in their system, but they have to check with the Library of Congress and other institutions in the city to make sure they're not duplicating. So,
well, we're fortunate in America to have such cherished institutions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, you've got your own book fair coming up next weekend.
Next weekend. I can't believe it. I spent this whole week playing on the computer, talking to people, making sure that the tables are going to arrive, and getting the advertising in, and talking to the newspapers. So it's happening.
For you.
Yes, it is.
Well, it's interesting to see you with your show producer hat on instead of your road warrior hat.
Yes, yeah.
Or your book salesman hat.
Or my book salesman hat. But I'm doing all three at the same time usually.
Yeah.
I bought some wonderful things last week at Brimfield. I'm going to be excited to show them in Concord. People see some of the stuff for the first time. It's been typically just exciting and interesting to be out here in the book world.
Yeah. Yeah. I have missed being out. I have missed being out. I remember you saying something in Boston when you were looking at all the stuff you had brought, that why did you bring so much stuff when you had to run the show too?
Yeah.
You made some comment about that.
Well, actually, I'll probably even bring more to Concord.
Probably will. But you did a fine job of running that show, I will have to say.
Well, thank you. Well, we hope to do as well a job as in Concord as we did in Boston. Working hard to make sure people find out about us and show up. But it does have a 47-year tradition, so that's a big help.
That is a big help.
Well, Richard, I'm coming up to see you next week. Is that okay? Can you schedule me in?
Ed, well, you know, I got to talk to my appointment secretary to make sure that she hasn't scheduled me someplace out of town. But barring any problems, I think that's going to work.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to getting lost in your stacks.
Well, who knows? I might even be able to take you to a nice place for lunch if you're good to me.
And if,
Yeah. If you're not good to me, it's McDonald's, okay?
Oh.
all right, I'll be on my best behavior.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, Richard, in addition to your show coming up on the 2nd of June at the Chelmsford Arena in Concord, New Hampshire, the Cooperstown, New York show is coming up very
Oh,
soon as well.
a,
It's
a
that time of
fan,
year.
a fan favorite, literally, to draw from the baseball analogy. Cooperstown's a beautiful community, sits at the end of a lake whose name I'm going to forget. But it's just gorgeous. Will Money and his family are so wonderful as hosts and hostesses for us. They treat us wonderfully well. We go out to dinner. It's a great social event. And the people of Cooperstown in that area love books, and they come and see us every year.
The lake, it's not Oswego, but it's something similar to that.
Something similar, yes. And I never can,
Yeah.
it's an Indian name, which I can't pronounce.
Yeah, it is such
Yeah.
a pretty town, such a pretty town.
Oh, it is. I've, on occasion, because of the way the calendar shifts, on occasion we've been there during the 4th of July celebration.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've been able to see fireworks over the lake there. It's just a delightful community because I think there's a museum there. I don't know if people know this one. It's probably a well-kept secret. You know, that I think it's is it the Baseball Hall of Fame?
Yeah,
I'm
I
not sure.
think maybe there is that one there.
Yeah, you know,
Also, there's also a farm museum.
there is.
Yes, where you can have your picture made in costume.
Yeah,
And one that had death masks of some writers like Cooper, it seems like. I don't
it could be.
remember this really well. It was a number of years ago. We spent some time in the emergency room in the hospital because my son had gotten too much chlorine in his eyes in the swimming pool at the hotel.
You-
So I have that
You
memory.
must have been there at the wrong time for him to be in the pool and not in the lake.
Well, this was an indoor pool at the
Uh,
place we were staying,
Yeah.
and you know the kids swam. We did visit a bookstore there and bought a
Oh,
book by a
yeah.
Calhoun native.
mhm.
And I think the guy at the bookstore could not believe that we actually knew this woman.
Oh my God, isn't that
Yeah,
fun? Yeah.
it was fun.
Well, that's Will Money's store, and it's a wonderful store. He has, I think, something like 200,000 books online.
Wow.
Yikes.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
They do a big internet business out of that store.
That's keeping them busy.
And if you need a book on baseball, and he doesn't have it, nobody else has
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
All right, folks, it's a short one today, just a coffee break edition. We're all just getting collectively back together, but we're going to be back next week with some real book type of information, some books to share with you, and some book people that will be joining us as well. So
And maybe we'll
Leon,
do a little digging in the warehouse, Ed.
yeah. Yeah,
That
next
sounds like
next
fun.
week show, everybody, is coming from Richard's warehouse.
There is another show that we haven't mentioned that's coming up. The 4th anniversary of the Getman's virtual book fair is coming up in 3 weeks.
2 weeks.
2
I
weeks,
think.
3 weeks, whatever. Not long. You know, it started during COVID, and this is the 4th anniversary show. And I am going to do it because at the moment, being able to do things from my computer is the easiest way to do things. So
I did pretty well with the IOBA online book fair, the virtual fair for IOBA. I only sold 4 items, but they were all, a couple of them, one of them was in 4 digits, and
wow.
I was happy with it.
Well, I was not as happy. But it was kind of an anomaly for those because I usually do pretty well with the virtual fairs. So I'm going to give this one. I'll do this one as well. I didn't lose money on it. Let's put it that way. So.
All right, Richard, Lee, good to see you all again. Glad to be back.
Good to
My
have you back.
jet lag is almost over, and let's talk again next week.
Okay.
And I'll make sure the paving crews have that road done before you get on the road.
Richard, you're making me nervous. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining
Thank
us
you.
for
Take
another
care.
edition
Bye.
of the Rare Book Cafe. Bye-bye. And don't forget the mugs.
Yes, the mugs. I have a mug. There's my mug.
Ladies and